It's starting. Hey guys, welcome to our broadcast. Today is Abel with me, and we are going to speak about different strategies how you can make your diet successful. Because in theory, all of us know that we should eat healthy and don't eat any junk, but often we just don't do it. There are some situations in our life where we can't just, stick to our diet and just start overeating, eating crap. And we decided to speak about the situations and how to prevent them. And first of all, I would like Abel to introduce himself.
Yeah. Hey, Dr. Zinchenko. Yeah, my name is Abel. I have a YouTube channel on YouTube. You can, well, it will be probably written. I could say my full name, but probably no one would know how to write it down. So just check the description. And I have a YouTube channel where I put up some informational videos and interview a lot of people in the fitness industry and just sometimes in general about in the topics of personal development. And now I really am planning to take the theme of my YouTube channel in this kind of direction, like dieting, mindset, dieting, psychology, managing overeating and emotional eating and those kinds of things, because I kind of see it as a gap in the content that is out there. So yeah, I'm really pumped that we're going to talk about this, and I think it's going to be a really cool discussion.
Yeah, and I will introduce myself as well. So, if you follow my channel, I'm Anastasia. I have a PhD in biochemistry. But now I transitioned to the sports and exercise field, and I do research for Bayesian bodybuilding, on sports and exercise-related topics. Also, I write for the Men's Fitness magazine, and I have a blog, and I'm a coach. And also what I realized, also working with my clients, but also, when I analyze my own behavior, that often the problem is not necessarily that people, don't know what to eat, or even if they know what to eat, they can't stick to the diet because there are some underlying problems, like the psychological side of dieting that Abel mentioned. And that's why we wanted to speak about it today.
Yeah.
What were the occasions when were falling off the wagon or like not following diet in the past? Could you talk about your own experiences?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And just to add one point to what you were saying, I think maybe we should clarify who we are specifically targeting with this discussion, because some of the anecdotes that we're going to mention will not make sense to people who don't really know, what macros are, what calories are, who never dieted, so we kind of assume in this discussion that most people who listen to it kind of know the basics already. So because when I'm going to say that I freaked out when I realized that I went over my macros by 500, if you don't know what a calorie is, that this will not make sense to you. But without that out of the way, to me, the biggest issue for me has always been just overthinking my diet and just over analyzing it in general. I kind of developed this saying that the amount of time that you spend thinking about the fact that you're dieting and analyzing food choices and just thinking about food in general is inversely proportional to your odds of succeeding. So for me, the biggest hurdle was always just kind of burning myself out mentally and just kind of talking about my diet, thinking about my diet. And after, 3-4 weeks in, just at the time when I would be, at the point where I could make great progress and could really gain that nice dieting momentum, exactly at that time, I just burnt myself out and slipped up and, just went on a binge, or even not on a binge, but just kind of just broke the momentum, and then I was off of my diet. And this is basically how in the past I struggled for months and months on end before the first time I actually got to single digit body fat. Like I got into training when I in like 2013. And the first time I actually ever gotten abs, like full six-pack abs, was like in 2015. So that kind of shows you for how long I was sabotaging myself. So that's what I would say it was for me. What about you?
For me, I think there were like many things where I actually sabotage myself. Often it is also not, not knowing or not analyzing actually now what I do or the situations when it happens, because usually I'm pretty good with staying on track with my diet if everything is in a certain kind of schedule. If everything is perfect, my life is perfect and nothing unexpected happens. And then if something unexpected happens, like I don't know, I go out on a party or I go and travel, then everything kind of starts falling apart. And that's where I learned that you have to plan also for unexpected events. What happens if something, is not according to your schedule, and always having a backup plan. And also not being afraid of, leaving your house without, or like, traveling and, not having the same food choices you have at home. It doesn't mean that you have necessarily followed the wagon. Because if you, for example, go to a party, nobody makes you really eating this food. And then you have to have some strategies, how you prevent yourself actually from overeating, especially if you have dieted for such a long time and maybe excluded all the foods that are really tempting. Then it is like really easy if you, are forced, if you are in a situation where this food is all over, all around, and you have to keep self-control and just not go and, start eating what you shouldn't be eating.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's I just want to mention that I probably should have added that as well. That managing social life and social occasions in the past was incredibly problematic, especially during the times when I was in university as a full-time student, and there just something unexpected happened all the time, and basically prior to really understanding what, how calories and energy balance and all these things worked, basically I had two modes. One of them was like super strict. For me, it happened to be low carb at the time, like low carb, high fat. Either that, or the other mode was like cheat meal mode, or like completely just going into YOLO mode. And that was fine in the sense that I really got to enjoy myself when I had like a cheat meal thing. But in the long term, I had to realize, like, okay, I have to find the solution. Like, I can't just completely blow up everything whenever something unexpected occurs. So I know we're going to touch on this later, but this is where, flexible dieting can have a lot of merit when it's an education kind of thing, where it's understanding the fundamentals of dieting. So yeah, that's I would just add that.
Yeah. And so, and then there are other things. For example, when I was prioritizing work and I was working like really long hours, and for me, like food is a tool to keep going. So for example, when I worked in the lab 15 to 19 hours a day, and when I was working at night, the only way I could keep myself motivated to go back to work or just not to fall asleep at night, because like all the caffeine, all the coffee, Coke didn't work anymore. I don't know how many liters of coffee I drank a day. It's kind of ridiculous. It just didn't work anymore. And the only thing that worked to keep me up at night when I was working was eating. And that was, of course, like really bad for my diet, because then I would also go for like high sugar, high fat options, just, comfort food. And there's actually also some research that suggests that metabolic energy, so calories, can refill willpower. And in this case, the willpower I needed was the willpower I needed to, stay up at night and do my experiments in the lab. And there's always a balance in life. You can't do, you can't have it all. You can't be exceptionally good in all and handle all situations in your life, with the same perfection. You can't, spend lots of time with your family, be great with your job, spend lots of time at work, then exercise, be great with your diet and do all the food prep. You just don't have so much time and so much energy for everything. So one of the things has kind of to suffer. And for me, it was definitely when I was like studying a lot and prioritizing work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a good transition point into what we wanted to mention, which is one of the biggest mistakes that people make with their nutrition in general. It doesn't just have to be with dieting, but just with kind of a fitness lifestyle in general. And I know that I've fallen for this countless times in the past, is trying to insist on strategies that in theory are optimal, but they just completely non-optimal for the person's lifestyle. And it's kind of the concept of, fitting your diet into your life versus your life into your diet. So, when we hear people glorifying intermittent fasting, yeah, sure, it works for a lot of people who are, very busy, they have a stressful job or whatever, very occupied. And for them, it's liberation that they don't have to think about food. But, for you, realizing that, okay, actually having some food around the times when you have to work in the lab for 19 hours is actually energizing for you, that's something that you have to take into account. It's not just about physiology, but what's fitting your lifestyle. And speaking of intermittent fasting, that's kind of something funny coming from me, but because I've actually been practicing intermittent fasting for like 4 years, and now actually I'm kind of became a breakfast eater, and I have to realize, like, after in the morning, like having a piece of fruit and some yogurt or whatever, I just feel so much better. And probably I could have realized this much earlier on, but I was insisting on the method instead of like looking at what works for my lifestyle. And I think this is something that is worth quoting, Greg O'Gallagher from Kino Body, who, gets a lot of backlash and hate and whatever, but there's something that I keep reminding myself of that he said, which is really, when it comes to fat loss, the most important thing is being able to hit that calorie deficit in the most enjoyable way possible. And whatever weight works for you, that's the best. Like, we can debate on the nuances and what the most optimal strategy is. Really, the most optimal one is that it's going to be optimal for you.
Yes,
So, yeah,
exactly.
that's what I would say.
I totally agree. Also, I love trying different types of diets. So sometimes, now I was doing intermittent fasting for a while. Now I went back to eating breakfast because I also changed my schedule, and I'm now more active in the morning. Then also, I do low carb, high carb, whatever diets. I've tried all of it. But then after a while, somehow I get back naturally to a certain macros ratio. So if I, don't like really try to force carbs into my diet, then I actually naturally start going back to like lower carb and higher fat diet, which is, it's definitely not a keto diet, but it's still, I don't know, like 30, my kind of, if I would look at my diet, my kind of natural way to eat, or the one that works for me the best, I think, is about the same proportion of carbs, protein, and fat. So about 30 something grams. So of course it fluctuates. It can be one day more, one day less, but around like 30%. And I think they made a really good point with the diet has to fit to the lifestyle. So for me now, I just decided, if I have like a really stressful day, so we had also some, now in summer when we were running the research study, I was in the lab also really long, and usually I don't eat so much in the evenings, but because I was so active in the evenings and just, didn't sit at home and was working on my computer, I came back home most of the time hungry, and I kind of didn't have any macros left because, I tried to follow my normal diet. And that's when I kind of made a rule for myself. So even if I cut on exceptionally, challenging or hard days, it's okay to eat maintenance. So that are kind of the neutral days. Because I know if I have like the stress at work, I have to do a lot. And then I try to push my diet hard, like also, okay, no, I'm more active, but I shouldn't eat more. Then it will backfire. Then at the end, I will, sometime I don't lose self-control. And in the evening, definitely more than my maintenance energy intake is. So if I know that I have something challenging in the evening, I would maybe put an extra meal that is, healthy, and the likelihood of overeating isn't that big.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring that up, because I'm probably going to make a video on this in the future, because I'm gonna feature the person, but I'm being coached by a brilliant strength coach at the moment, and the guide that he sent me on like general instructions, he said that, look, if at the end of the day you're still hungry and like you're really hungry, I want you to eat more food. Like, and he said that it's ironic that, and I think it was such a great point, that so many people are so neurotic about hitting their macros exactly to the point where, you know, they will cut off a piece of chicken breast so that it's exactly 200 grams and not 210 grams. But, you know, the kind of the variation that goes into energy expenditure and whatever, like you can easily burn that amount of calories off by just standing, you know, 20 minutes more during the day or whatever. Like, and that's what he said, that like these people who are so neurotic about hitting their macros to the gram would probably not call someone to like take them home with the car because they already expended more energy than what they wanted during the day. So they can't afford to make that extra 15-minute walk, because then they're going to whatever expend 50 calories more. So kind of just having a flexible, kind of more relaxed attitude about dieting in general. And we're going to touch on flexible dieting and all that stuff a bit later, but that's one of the most critical skills you can master, I think, for dieting success.
I think it's a really good point you brought up, and I'm like really happy to hear that, you know, also kind of other coaches use the strategy. For me, also for myself, if I notice I'm like hungry in the evening and I don't have any calories left, then I have kind of for myself this rule: if it's like something healthy and low calories, kind of like maybe some vegetables with some seasoning, you can eat as much as you want. Okay, maybe it won't hit my macros anymore, but if I'm really hungry, I would eat vegetables. I would eat also lower calorie options that fill me up at the end. And you can make taste them really good with using different spices. But if it's just like, oh, I'm bored, I want to eat something, I don't really need the food, but I don't know, maybe I just want to, you know, increase my mood by eating some comfort food, then I definitely wouldn't go for vegetables. And also the meal plans I give out, they have also a kind of a column with like free vegetables. So if you feel hungry after a meal or during the meal or whenever, you can eat as many of them as you want. You don't need to track them, you don't need to count them. And mostly it's actually raw food, like raw vegetables, because I don't think someone would eat like, I don't know, 1 kilogram of spinach.
No, probably not. But actually, may I make a completely random point here?
Yeah, sure.
I would really like to see a study where they have like 2 isocaloric groups, like everything is exactly the same, and one group is allowed to have like an extra, like, I don't know, 100 calories of 200 calories of like cucumbers on top of that. Like, I'm honestly curious, like, would the extra calories contribute to kind of the caloric equivalent of weight gain that you would predict? Because like, I don't know, just logically speaking, that extra fiber, like there is no way your body is going to store that. Like, sure, it's going to create a bit of a cushion for the other calories you've eaten, but I'm just wondering how that would work out in practice. I don't know.
I think it's like a lot of volume. It can be that you just, you know, lose appetite and don't want to eat at all. It can actually lead that the general calorie intake, I think, will decrease. If you force people to eat more vegetables, they will eat in general less. Or also sometimes what I do for myself, if I'm like really, if I want to have something that is not really not on my meal plan, but maybe somehow outside of my meal plan, and I'm like, okay, I should have a healthy meal. If you eat, I don't know, one big serving of vegetables first, then you can have the other thing. And sometimes I'm like, oh no, I don't want to eat with the vegetables, so I'm fine, not having chocolate after. So for me, it's even sometimes a tool, kind of, if I say, okay, if you want to have some of the junk food, you have to equal it out with a reasonable size of vegetables. And often my desire to eat this amount of vegetables is so low, so I just don't go for junk food.
Right. No, yeah, we talked about this a bit before the call, that, you know, like it's a correlation thing. Like if you eat veggies with every meal, your chances of overeating will be just so much less. Like nobody's eating a bunch of veggies when they're having a cheat meal. Like that just doesn't happen. So
Except that I like fried veggies from the Chinese restaurant, this one
Yeah.
with, all this coating with sugar and starch and everything.
Yeah, yeah. With modern food technology, you can make anything kind of a culprit food if you're really trying hard. But yeah. So maybe we can touch on, because we just touched on like being hungry at the end of the day and having that flexible mindset with macros and everything. One of the most common way that people break their diets is when they go over a little bit. This is probably one of the most common ways of like diet breaker methods of like going over accidentally a little bit or eating something you didn't plan and then just turning it into a disaster. Like maybe we can touch on that a little bit. Like what is your experience with this, with people you worked with, or just on your own? Like, the feeling you had a perfect day and then you have like a small piece of cookie or whatever, and then it's like, oh shit, and then it turns into a disaster.
Yes, yes. I totally had this experience also myself. And interestingly, mostly in my past, before I reviewed all the metabolic studies for the metabolic damage paper and looked more into the topic of metabolism. And then I have actually also calculated, if you overeat, how long do you need actually to make up for it? And then I realized it's like there are like every 100 calories that count. For me, like it's a rule of thumb, I need 2.5 days of dieting to make up for 1 day of overeating.
Really?
And if I take kind of the average calorie intake I could have on a like really high overeating day, and then it's just that's absolutely not worth it, because there are like also this myth, or not myth, it's kind of true that if you consume more carbs, then you start expending more energy. But then it's required to overeat like 30% and you will expend just 7% more energy. Or also the same if you're in general in calorie surplus, your body starts expending more energy, but it's like maybe 100 kilocalories more a day if you overeat for, I don't know, 50% of your maintenance energy intake, which it doesn't equal it out at all. And
Yeah.
I think, if kind of this myth, so, if you eat more, then your body starts expending more, and you don't know the real numbers, it's always easier to tell yourself when you're in such a situation, like, oh, I had one piece, okay, now it doesn't matter anyway, so I can eat the entire bar. And if I overeat, it's not too bad, just because, my body will start expending more energy, so I will burn more, so it won't cause so much damage. And when I've seen the actual numbers and made my calculations, then I realized, no, actually every bit, every piece, everything counts. You can't really put numbers like on the body, like this biological system, because some people move more, some people move less. There's so much variation. But if you take the average of of all the research findings, then it's like every calorie actually counts. You can't make up for like huge overeating meal with the energy expenditure that your body will start naturally expending more.
Yeah. Yeah, and I, especially when, I mean, I believe in transparency. So I'm just going to say that I've had such blowouts in the past where, like I literally turned into like, 500 calorie slip ups into like several thousand calorie slip ups, and those, like at some point, yeah, I pretty much just caused myself to diet for another like 2 weeks at certain instances. So, like really whatever we can like suggest people here to try to avoid that will be helpful. So, just to give a like a funny personal anecdote here, just I'm cutting currently, and so it was like 2 weeks ago now, I bought this quark or cottage cheese sort of thing, and I had to realize that like halfway through eating it, I realized that the nutrition label was completely misrepresented, because it said like 66 calories per 100 gram. And then I looked at it like, no, wait, it has like 12 grams of fat, 12 grams of protein, and like 4 grams of carbs. Like there is no way that this is 66 calories. So I added the numbers up and I realized that I just basically completely eliminated the day's deficit by eating that stuff. And that was very hard to deal with on a psychological and emotional level, because it was the final meal of the day. So I was good all day long. I put in the effort. I was disciplined. And then in this freaking final meal of the day, out of my own fault, I eliminated the deficit. And that was very frustrating because I didn't even get to enjoy myself. It was an accidental slip up. And luckily, it didn't turn into anything bad. I didn't binge or anything, but I know that the urge was there because it was like, fuck it. Like, if I screwed up, I might as well enjoy myself. But as we know, the problem is that you're not really enjoying yourself when these things happen. So I guess, and I will ask what your tips on this are, but I guess my kind of the strategy that I worked out for myself for these kinds of situations is kind of visualizing or just imagining this situation in advance, because I knew that these kinds of things will happen occasionally, and planning in advance as to what I'm going to do if it happens. And I kind of made myself a little mantra or like a couple of sentences that I'm just going to apply to myself as self-talk. Like, okay, if I go over my macros accidentally or not accidentally, if I'm over by 200 or 500, I'm just going to say, look, like, this is like 1/7 of a pound. Is this really going to matter in like 2 or 3 months time? No, it's not going to matter. However, I do know in the past, like, what happened when I went over by 5,000 calories, that did matter. So I just kind of made myself this, like, okay, this is what I'm going to repeat to myself when I'm in this situation. And it worked really well. Like, and this is also this concept that, I don't know if you've read the book, The Willpower Instinct by Kelly something, but she talks about this idea that when there is a strong urge to do something, like binging in a situation like this, what you really have to do is kind of just view this as like a wave of temptation that is there and just ride it out. So like, just wait, and just, the urge is there, but just don't act on it. Just sit and wait for 5 minutes, and you will kind of always realize that the temptation just slowly dies away, even if you don't act on it. So kind of that's just my 2 cents on it, just off the top of my head. What about you? What strategies
Yeah,
work
definitely.
well?
I have actually lots of comments to make, because with this impulsive thing, that was also something I looked into just recently. But first of all, I want to say what I would do. So I realized that, there's no point to beat yourself up. So even if you ate more than you should, because if you get these negative feelings, then it makes even everything worse, because you feel probably, for most people, when they fall off the wagon, it has often like emotional reasons, like the weather is bad, maybe it's winter, maybe something stressful happens. So there's actually, in terms of brain chemistry, there's change in levels of some substances like serotonin, dopamine, that make you kind of sad anyway. And if you start beating yourself up and not being kind to yourself, then it makes actually everything worse. That doesn't improve the levels of your, let's say, happiness hormones, but makes them decrease even lower. And then there's even more urge to eat more. So it's like a vicious cycle. Mm-hmm. For this reason, I think it's like really important when something, like when I overate or acted really impulsively and it happens. So the first thing is like, okay, it's fine, it can happen, you're a human. And the most important thing what you have to do is to learn from it. So all the mistakes I make, I analyze it later. Actually, I have a journal, and if I realize, okay, one day wasn't really that good, so I actually write every day down and write the analysis of it. So it's like, okay, why did I have this food? Why did I have too much of this food? Why did I feel the urge to have even more? And how can I prevent it in the future? And sometimes I've read also like, like kind of checklist or workflows. How do I have to act in the future? And I think now the interesting thing with all this impulsive behavior is, I set myself the goal not really to either follow my diet or eat healthy, because it's how my diet is structured anyway. I think even if I wouldn't track macros, I know how much carbs, fat, and protein to put in for a meal, so I would stay within a certain macro range. What often kind of sabotages my result is like impulsive actions for whatever reason, because maybe I'm stressed, or because I got stuck with work and I want to procrastinate, and going and snacking is a great way to procrastinate. And I get stuck, and then I have this urge kind of, you can just go and grab something to eat. So for me now, my goal is actually not really to follow my diet, because if you're like, as you already told at the beginning, if you're over-analyzing everything and overthinking, you make it so much harder. So my goal is not to do any impulsive decisions. So I have my meal structure, I have my working structure, and I actually downloaded an app actually for parents, how they can reward their children for good behavior, like, I don't know, eating fruits, helping with the dishes, or being kind. And I created my own entries. So like not making any impulsive decisions, or keeping my working structure, or not having any unnecessary snacks. And I divided the day in several time slots of like mostly 2 or 3 hour periods. And then every 2 or 3 hours, I give myself reward points if, I behaved well. Because if something works for children, why shouldn't it work for grown-ups? And it's so easy if you divide it into like smaller steps, because it looks like doable. So if I'm like sitting there, I get my meal, and then I got stuck with work and I just want to go and snack on chocolate, and I'm like, oh no, just wait another hour, then you can have a snack, and you get like, let's say, a reward point for it. It doesn't seem like, so long. So it's like you are never allowed to have snacks. It just, just keep it up for the next hour. It's not too long. Just stay on track for the next hour. And I think it also does a psychological trick.
Right. Yeah. And we just talked about it before that, this concept of willpower is limited. That's debatable. Some people say it is, some people say it isn't. But one thing that is definitely good to keep in mind is that the more you practice just fighting off these impulsive urges, the better you get at it. And also this ties into this concept of delaying gratification, and just being able to delay, like, okay, I get to eat in 1 hour. Can I really not wait for 1 hour? Like, and this seems funny probably for a lot of people who are not in the situation of dieting and whatever. But, if you are cutting and, you're just pretty food focused, that 1 hour can actually seem like a very long time in that moment. Like it can seem remarkably long. Like literally I was in situations where, especially with like intermittent fasting, where, okay, my first meal would be at noon. At 11, I was like, is this 1 hour ever going to like pass? Like, how can time go freaking slowly, especially if I was doing something boring? But like the more you practice this, kind of the easier it gets over time. And just a funny example, like literally just before this call, like I got home, I was in the gym, I was shopping, and I got home and I really had the urge to just sit down and have a nice big meal, because that's usually what I do when I get home, because that's just how my normal schedule is. But now I was like, okay, I'm not going to have a huge meal, because I'm going to do this stream before, and I don't want to or after, and I don't want to stand here like stuffed to the point of like, can't even move, and I just want to lay down and sleep. And now I'm actually very grateful for my past self that I didn't eat that huge meal. So, and that is like, these are tiny little like occasions where you can practice basically delaying gratification and just not giving into impulsive urges. So yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was actually the same with me. I just came from the gym, and then I had, I don't know, half an hour to prepare my meal. And actually, I just ate half of my meal, because I was like, okay, probably in this time, I can't prepare everything I want and then eat everything, because I realized if I, don't enjoy my meal, then if I'm not really satisfied with my meal for whatever reason, because I have to eat fast, because I don't have time, because I know it's not what I actually wanted to eat, or for different reasons, then I could eat forever. So for me, it's a really important point that I have to be satisfied with my meal. Because if I don't have enough time to eat now, I just rather, have something small and then, okay, we'll have a proper meal later, than just trying to get everything in as fast as possible. And this is like really challenging for me because I schedule everything, but I run always late. So it's really difficult for me, like then when I'm also maybe hungry or like look really forward to this meal and then say, okay, no, just have it later, because now you can't prepare it in 10 minutes and eat it because you just won't enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, many times I have that when, I know that, okay, I have a meal in like 2 hours, but I'm really freaking hungry. And like someone offers me a piece of chocolate or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I could probably just have this chocolate and it probably wouldn't be a big deal. But like, no, I want my meal. Like that's gonna be a nice occasion when I'm sitting down and really enjoying it. And I'm like, I would rather just wait until I actually get to eat like a decent meal. But yeah, maybe we can touch on the next point here, which is kind of social occasions and just life interfering with your diet, and that just kind of breaking that dieting momentum. So, like I said, for me, this was a huge challenge in the past, and I think especially for younger people who have an active social life, trying to balance their fitness goals and especially diet with social life and just kind of being surrounded by people in general who don't give a crap about nutrition can be very challenging. And I'm kind of in that situation right now where I'm in Macedonia, and kind of as I'm putting it together, people are not very health conscious at this part of the world, and it's I know that they will never understand kind of the nutritional decisions I will make. Like there is no point in trying to fill them in or trying to inform them about what I'm doing. I kind of just have to always hope that, they're not going to put me in a situation where I really have no good choices to make. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's also like often like really socially awkward if you don't want to be not polite. If somebody, oh, I made a cake, extra for you, or you have to, it's my whatever birthday, you have to eat a piece of this cake, and then it's like really difficult to not to be like really socially awkward or not really polite and say, no, I'm on a diet, I'm not going to eat it. And I think these are like the challenging situation when you then say, okay, I have to be polite, I will have this piece of cake, but then not to have a second one, then not to lose control yourself, like what we spoke about before, and not to slip off, and not to start going for second piece and third piece, and that will end up in like a huge, I don't know, overeating action or binge or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to me, like I actually wrote, probably we could link it in the description later. I wrote like this crazy long like manifesto on how to manage social occasions and your fitness goals. But like my general policy became over the years is that you kind of have to make a distinction in your mind between those social occasions where you eating that specific food is really going to contribute to the overall experience. Like there's a difference between someone coming to you, like your grandma coming to you and like, hey, I baked this piece of chocolate cake for you. Are you gonna have it? And it's like, yeah, sure, grandma. That's one thing. Like you could say no. And if you're preparing for a bodybuilding contest, you may have to say no. But in general, I mean, you're probably just going to make her day if you have a piece and you're like smiling at her and saying that it was delicious. Like that's one occasion. But when you're in a party and people are walking around with those trays with the little food on it, and people are just randomly picking some nibbles from the tray, that's like you're not going to offend anyone if you're not having a piece. Like that's literally just wasteful calories that you're having right there. So you kind of always have to judge like what is the significance of this event and what kind of integral part or how integral part of does the food play in this event? And if the answer is, well, it's just kind of nobody cares, then it's completely fine to just not have it. I mean, you're probably better off not having it. But at the same time, I'm in Macedonia, and my landlords are these two kind of elderly people. They're lovely people. And I just told you this not that long ago, that when I go to pay the rent, it's not just paying the rent. Like, they're having me sit down and offer me food and some, shots of alcohol and whatever. And it's like, if I don't have it, then I know I'm just going to offend them really badly. And so, yeah, okay, I just came back from the gym. I'm going to have a shot of this Macedonian spirit. Whatever, I don't care. Like, just make them feel good. It's just not worth the sacrifice of offending them that badly. So it's kind of a balancing act.
Yeah, but it's also something you can plan in advance. For example, if I had also like some of my clients were like, okay, if I go and eat with my friends, they will make also stuff for me, and they will want me to eat it. And that's, for example, when I suggest strategies like intermittent fasting, at least for this day, where it's like, okay, if you already know that you will go and eat out with your friends in the evening and it will be like a huge meal, then it can make actually sense to fast in the morning and just not to have breakfast and to make up for it. And then it's even like intermittent fasting is not necessarily then like this lifestyle you like try to follow because somebody told that it's good, but it's just a tool on the certain day.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Like, and that is, to me, that is what flexible dieting should be. Like, it's not, to me, flexible dieting is not supposed to be this, you're a flexible dieter if you track every gram of food to the gram. To me, flexible dieting is more like a flexible lifestyle where you can make these decisions on the fly. Like, okay, I'm out of town, I'm going to eat out 2 times a day. Cool, I'm going to have 2 meals a day. I'm going to fast in the morning, and I'm just going to make it work. Like, that's flexibility to me, and I think that ultimately should be the goal for everyone. So yeah, great point.
And also then preparing maybe for like occasions that, if you go out somewhere and you don't know what you will get to eat, and okay, I want to get my protein in. For vegans, it's probably much more difficult than for non-vegans. That's why, for example, I usually would have protein powder or a protein bar with me, so that I know, okay, I will always find a vegan option. It wasn't like such a case where I didn't find a vegan, even more or less healthy option, because, you can always ask, okay, I want to have the salad, just, can you, put oil and vinegar on the side and not top it with anything that isn't vegan. But for such occasions, it's also important then for me to have a backup. It was like, okay, I didn't get actually the nutrients in I wanted to have with this meal, so I will have a protein shake later. And I think another point that is important, and what probably many of my friends, or also I think even myself, I struggled with in the beginning or like years ago, is not appearing like really, or not being afraid to appear as a really socially awkward person. Because you can imagine all your friends are having pizza and you're like, oh, can I, have the salad and, remove just all the stuff from it, put oil and vinegar on the side. And also they, having alcohol, and you're like, oh, actually, could I have, maybe a green tea? And for me, it was like, I think when I started my PhD and the people from the lab went out a lot, and I went out with them as well, but and kind of made also like normal choices, what like normal people would make. But then over time, I think I just became kind of brave enough, because you have also to be like brave to step outside the box. When everyone was drinking alcohol, I was drinking, Coke or tea or whatever. So I ended up being the only person in the pub sitting with a cup of tea. But then I was fine with it. So it's like a question I had to answer myself. What is more important for me? My progress, feeling happy, or maybe having this drink I would maybe even enjoy in this moment, but feeling like crap in the gym tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, that comes back to really like kind of being honest with yourself, like what you value at the moment. Because I had like right now, I'm kind of doing what you're doing. Like I'm kind of avoiding problematic situations. When I'm in that situation, I'm kind of, I don't really give a crap. I'm just going to like be moderate, whatever, because nobody really cares and I don't care. I'm here for a couple of months and then I'm going to move on with my life. But, you know, when I, like 2 years ago, I was in New Zealand, and then I kind of had to almost force myself to go out of my ways and do have that drink with my friends and whatever, because then I really felt like I would benefit from bonding with them socially. And, you know, some of my best experiences of my life actually came out of those choices. So it's, you kind of, but you have to be honest with yourself. Like, is this, am I just being like rigid and just being afraid of stepping outside of my comfort zone, and I'm staying home and not going out with my friends because of that? Or this thing that I'm working on right now, this progress that I'm making with my fitness, is really meaningful to me, and I don't want to sacrifice that. So it's kind of a reality check.
Yeah, yeah. And I also think what I realized often, I'm a person, I tend to isolate myself. And I know for me, it's kind of a big problem because I'm fine being with on my own. But then after a while, I know after I haven't seen anyone for, I know, 2 weeks, or like, you know, like proper like meeting with my friends, I kind of start going crazy. And I think in the past I made this mistake that I probably avoided to go to parties or to meals out because I was like, oh no, I will eat something that is not on my plan and that will kind of be negative for my progress. And then most of the time, if I isolated myself for too long, I kind of got like in a really bad mood. And I probably ended up eating more just because of emotional eating, just because I know I felt lonely, I felt bad. I ended up eating more than I would have had eaten if I went out for a meal with my friends, which is another thing to keep in mind. So it's, you know, if you're the person who, I don't know, is kind of prone to emotional eating, and especially because of, I don't know, loneliness or, I don't know, boredom or lower like social contacts, then it may be worse just to take into account this, I don't know, few extra 100 calories you would have from this meal and go out with your friends and kind of get also like some positive feelings from the interactions with your friends, then just, you know, stay at home, try to push through with your diet, and then end up super unlucky and yeah, just depressed and, you know, start binge eating because of you know, your low mood.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm glad that you brought this up, because I think, first of all, I think this is kind of an introvert trap that I think it's easy to fall into. Like, I myself also, like, I can go ridiculous lengths without like seeing a person. Like, honestly, I can be with my laptop, work on things, and like it will be like 3 months, and I'm like, okay, I haven't really seen a human being like 90 days, so probably I should go out of my ways a little bit. But what you said about, you know, not going out with your friends and then overeating on your own, it definitely happened to me in the past. And then of course I was like loathing myself, like, shit, like at least I could have gone out and I could have enjoyed myself, and overeaten in that context. And now I'm just hating myself because I overate here. And I think there a lot has to do with this element of control. And you know, just because when you're at home and overeating by yourself, at least that was your decision. Like, you made that choice and you made the move, and it's only yourself to blame. So you still are in control, and that's still more kind of empowering. And that's why it occurs so regularly. Whereas, you know, I'm sure this happened to you in the past as well, that you're just about to make good progress on your diet, and then some, you know, like a wedding comes up or some big social occasions, and it's like, come on, like I was just about to hit my stride, and now you're like forcing me into this social occasions where I just kind of have to stuff myself with chocolate cake. That's very frustrating, and in that context, you're not in control. And I think that can be very frustrating, and it's, yeah, that's very tough. Like, and I think that's again a skill that you just kind of have to practice. Like, okay, it seems like I kind of have to go there because I'm just going to miss out on a lot of good stuff if I don't go, or I'm going to offend people. I'm going to go there. and I'm going to remain mindful. And this is my plan. This is my game plan. This is what I'm going to do exactly. And actually, we put together a little cheat sheet that we put in the description, which kind of like little questions that you can ask yourself, like, what am I going to do? What is my strategy? And that comes down to practice. Like, you kind of have to go through the fire, but if you practice, you will get better at it.
Yeah, that's exactly. Everything is like a skill. And that is, I think, something that is like really encouraging, because in the past years, I learned so much, and I finally understood that, successful dieting, it's a skill. Even if you know a lot, you will still make mistakes, because there will be situations that come up you didn't expect. I know people will offer you different stuff, or you will run into situations where you can't make smart food choices, and then at the end it's like, oh, I should have chosen this meal, but I didn't think about it like kind of instantly when I was asked. And it's something you have to analyze, and you have to foresee the situations. And also, what I sometimes practice with my clients, if they already know that there will be like a scary situation coming, like, I know, scary in terms of, I know, you're dieting and you go to someone's birthday, or there's Christmas or whatever, just to make a plan. Imagine, as you mentioned, like, your grandmother will come and offer you a piece of like chocolate cake. What do? Well, I say thank you and eat a small piece. I won't go for the entire cake. And then it's like, okay, what will happen with the rest of the cake? It's like, okay, maybe I will have a piece tomorrow, or maybe I will have a piece, or like give some of it to my friends. Another actually strategy I have, if you have some food around, or let's say, someone gives you a cake, or there are lots and lots of leftovers after like a Christmas meal. So it's like one thing if you eat it, during a meal on Christmas, like one day, and then the other thing if you have like also leftovers from high calorie foods for the next, I don't know, 3 or 4 days.
Oh yeah.
And what I actually do in the situations is I go and give the leftovers food I have to homeless people.
Oh, that's nice.
It was actually, I don't know, some time ago, I was on a barbecue party with my friends, and we had lots and lots of bread that was just left, because everyone brought lots of bread and also stuff to, for the barbecue. And then we had like, I don't know, 8 packages of bread left, like different like hamburger buns and stuff like that. And then it's like, okay, what are we going to do with it? And nobody wanted to take it home. And I was like, we can't throw it away. It's just, just wrong. We can't throw it away. And I was like, and I don't want to really take it to my home, because I know that I love bread, and I will certainly, after a while, when I'm stressed, lose control and overeat on it. Even if I freeze it, I shouldn't have 8 packages of bread at home, just for the sake of my own safety and my diet progress. And that's when I was cycling home, and I was like, okay, I will just cycle through the city. There are many homeless people, and I will just give the bread to homeless people. And they were so thankful. And I didn't really expect it, because I cycled by and went to them and offered them bread, and they were like incredibly thankful. And then I understood how much they needed. So now, even if I, let's say, had an impulsive decision and wanted to try something, like just recently, like Oreos, there are like this new thin Oreos, and there are like 2 packages in one pack. So I was like, oh, okay, it tastes really good. So I tried 1 pack, and then I was like, okay, I shouldn't eat the second one. So when I, was walking by the street, I, kind of gave the second pack. So there are like 2 separately packed packages to one of the homeless people who was sitting there. And it was again, absolutely the same reaction. And that's what I often do now if I make, I don't know, a poor decision, or even get or make food where I'm like, okay, I shouldn't be eating it. And actually the people needed, like other people needed actually more than me. That's when I kind of go and, share it with homeless people. And now I move on Wednesday, so I leave England, and that's what I decided actually to do with all my leftovers as well. So not like trying now to consume all of my leftovers, so nothing gets wasted, because I hated throwing away food. So it's like almost never happens. like just really emergency cases where I can't really eat it anymore. So that's actually my plan. But it's like all the foods that I will have as leftovers, I will cook a meal and bring it to homeless people, like go to the city and I kind of distribute it there.
Yeah, no, that's actually one time I did the same thing with I wanted to go ham on a jar of almond butter, and like, and it was really funny, and then I was like, shit, I really shouldn't do this, and then I actually gave it to a homeless person on the street, and probably was like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is this, like almond butter? I've never even seen anything like this, but. I mean, if everybody did what you did, it would be amazing because we wouldn't have an obesity epidemic, and we would have homeless people who are well fed. So, yeah, like people should take your advice there. But yeah, like the leftovers after Christmas, that can be very tough. And like actually, it's a good point to bring up just the power of the environment. Like, I'm traveling just like you. I'm kind of always all over the place in the world, and always usually living on my own, or at the very least I have my own food. Like I don't have a shared fridge or whatever with other people. And after I went back to Hungary to visit, and I stayed with my family, and then it was a very new situation for me to deal with, like that whole fridge with like stuffed with food, and like all those things that I haven't eaten in a very long time, like cheese. Nothing wrong with cheese, but like I just I never buy cheese for myself because it's just too calorie dense. It's hard to fit it in and whatever. And it was tough all of a sudden to like handle that situation. And I actually experienced a pretty bad blowout. Like I didn't make a big deal out of it, but it was about a year ago, and I went through like 2 weeks of pretty hardcore overeating at home, like just rubbing the fridge all the time. So yeah, that's environmental engineering.
It's super familiar to me. It's kind of the same with me when because now I live like 4 ages by myself. Okay, usually I live with other people, so I have housemates, so we share the fridge, but everyone has his own food. Sometimes or pretty often it happened that my food disappeared from the fridge because my housemates took it, but that's another issue. It's not like I would go and eat their food. Mm-hmm. And then when I went home to Germany or over Christmas all the time, and at my mom's place, there's kind of, food everywhere. And I'm not even sure how she manages to have like, kind of a tray with cookies, nuts and everything that is just lying there, like standing just on the table for days, because I would just, without realizing it, kind of act impulsively and just, all the time when I go by just to take something and just eat it. And of course, the same with fridge. And now when I go home, most of the time, I tell my mom to hide everything. It's like, if you have something at home, just hide it and don't tell me where it is. Because I will get stuck with work at some evening and will either crave chocolate, some high-calorie food. And if you don't tell me where it is, I won't eat it. So just hide everything for me.
Yeah, actually, I did the same thing with my mom. Like when I was home, I just told her to like, look, I'm buying my own food and everything else is yours. And if I eat it, then let's consider that to be like fucking rude. Like that's not my food, that's yours. So I have no right to eat your food. And that was kind of the rule, and that helped. But yeah, it's really funny that like how being in the fitness game and tracking macros and all of that stuff just changes your entire mindset around food. Because I mean, I remember being a high school kid. I mean, I never had issues with weight. I was always a pretty lean kid, and I was not like naturally skinny either. But I just, and we did have cookies, we did have chocolate at home, but I just kind of auto-regulated these things because I just had a completely different mindset and just kind of emotional relationship with the food. It was like, yeah, sure, it's cool. Like, I know that having too much chocolate is not that bad. Like, okay, my weight went up a little bit. Okay, I will have a bit more cucumbers and a bit less chocolate. And it just kind of balanced itself out over the years. And now it's like, I think it would be very hard for me to do it that way. Like everything kind of changed once I really got into fitness. And I think like most people listening to this can attest to this. So yeah, that's an interesting point. Shall we?
I
Go
just
ahead.
wanted to bring up a point that for, I know, some of the people, it's also like really challenging. So for us, I think it's like relatively easy if you just buy everything for yourself, or if you're in situations where you can say, okay, that's your food, that's my food. You know, I don't want to have anything of your food. But for people who have, for example, families or live together with their partner, it can be like really challenging if their partner brings all the time, you know, junk food home, or there are children around who want to have cookies, and you as a parent and, you know, and fitness person, let's say, at the same time, just are tempted all the time and see all this food all the time, and then not to have it.
Oh
Then
yeah.
do you have any ideas or, I know, experiences how to handle this?
Yeah, I've actually been thinking about this because that's literally like what I thought about. Like, if I want to give advice for people on this, like, it's easy for me to say because I live on my own, I buy my own food, like, sure, but what about other people? And I think that's what I just kind of the little deal I made with my mom. That could be a decision or like a strategy for other people. Like, let's say you are a girl and you have a boyfriend who doesn't give a shit about, you know, fitness and nutrition, and he just buys candy and whatever. Just tell him that, like, look, like, this is important to me. This is not conducive for my goals, and this is difficult for me to have all this junk food lying around all the time. So please just buy only as much of this as what you're going to eat, and if possible, just, you know, put it out of my sight. Like, let's put it into this cupboard. Actually, this is something that Brian Wensink, I don't know, wrote a lot in his books, Mindless Eating and Slim by Design. That, you know, just changing the vicinity of the food and the proximity of the food can have a massive impact. So, you know, just let's, you know, this is the how do you call it, whatever, kitchen table, let's say. Let's just put, you know, fruits and, you know, veggies on top of it in a bowl. Let's not put the candy and the cereals and the chips, let's not put it there. Just let's put it in a cupboard there, and that's your cupboard, and let's make that a rule. Like, maybe it sounds weird to you, honey, but this is going to really help me, and I would appreciate your support. So that's, and you can obviously extrapolate that to any kind of social setup. So kids and family, or husband, wife, whatever.
Yeah.
What do you?
Yeah, I think like all the setting, like first thing, like if possible, put it out of sight. It's like a great thing. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, I think it's also really good or like really efficient to have rules. Like, for example, for myself, I know for me, like, rules and also restricting something, maybe also like for a reason, like really works. For example, that's the interesting thing. Before I went vegan, and I ate, like, I was vegetarian, but I ate, like, I don't know, I couldn't resist cookies, chocolate, and everything. And we had lab meetings in the lab once a week. And so somebody presented his progress, and we usually had cakes, cookies, also pastries, but also some fruits. And usually the person who had to get cakes got like a lot of cakes. So it was there for the next few days. And that's when I probably overate on cakes, and like unnecessarily cakes, cookies, and everything. Maybe, I don't know, 500,000 calories a day, just because it was there and I was there, and maybe sometimes I was bored. And
Yeah.
then when I went vegan, all the kind of junk food we got, or they got, it wasn't vegan anymore. So it wasn't vegan, so I didn't eat it anymore. And then suddenly I started eating just fruits. So the things I couldn't resist before, when I had kind of a set rule, okay, I'm vegan now, I don't eat it anymore, it was perfectly fine. But now if I baked cakes, because when it was my turn to bring cakes to the lab, of course, I brought just vegan stuff because, you know, I made it myself. I made cakes myself. Then I again had all the kind of cakes because they were kind of accessible to me because they're vegan and I could eat it. And I ate, of course, more than I should. So it's, you know, sometimes it's like really hard. But if you would set yourself kind of strict rules in daily settings, and also have kind of a goal while you want to follow them, if it's like vegan, or because I want to lose weight, because I want to enter this fitness competition, because I want, I don't know, to be healthy, and tell it to yourself all the time, then it's much easier to resist. I know it's restrictive, but I think that's kind of why most of the diets are so successful. If you look at even at the most stupid diets, they have one thing in common. They are restrictive. So they restrict one certain type of food, even if it's carbs, if it's fat, if it's junk food, if it's something. And if you restrict something, then people will automatically eat less and lose weight.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's I'm glad you brought the vegan thing up, because I think that's exactly the experience that a lot of people have. And I certainly, like, to me, the problematic things to avoid were not things like French fries or Nutella or whatever. It was always the things that could be kind of justified to be eaten, like peanut butter, like oatmeal. And actually very funny, I didn't even think of bringing this up, but I'm not sure how much you contributed of the article that the Bayesian bodybuilding team put out on grains for gains, and basically just talked about the anti-nutrients in grains, and also mentioned that oatmeal has a lot of anti-nutrients in it. And I was like, oh my God, thank God. Like, I'm so glad that, like, I will have such an easier time not eating oatmeal, because, like, cool, it's like, it's not even healthy. Like, because so far I was like, yeah, I could kind of eat oatmeal, and then I would overeat on it. Like, for me, that's kind of a culprit food, because, and this is, I think it's also referred to as white line boundaries, where, like, okay, it's kind of okay, kind of not, like, okay, let's eat a little bit, and then you're sliding into trouble. It doesn't have to be that way, but I think a lot of people find that there are these in between kind of gateway type of foods where it's justified to eat it. You just have to eat it in moderation, and then it becomes problematic. So yeah, it's like peanut butter, almond butter, those kinds of things were my culprit foods all the time.
Yeah,
And
yeah, it's exactly that's the thing. If you have kind of an excuse, yeah, but actually it's healthy. It's not that bad. Also with nuts, because several research studies have shown that not all calories from nuts gets absorbed. So if you're like, oh, if I eat like a bit more peanut butter, but it's not that bad, because actually I will get less or like fewer calories that there are on the label, just because they don't get absorbed, and then you get more, and then at the end it's like, no, there shouldn't be no excuses. But I think that's what our brains automatically do. They just try to find, I don't know, kind of excuses for our behavior. Also, like with some, I don't know, also with I don't know, even unhealthy foods, your brain will always come up with an idea why you should eat it.
yeah, also, like, this how do you call it, effective forecasting, I think what it's called, where you kind of envision your future self as like a completely different person than what you are currently. And I made this not thousands, but like dozens of times, where I was like, okay, I'm just going to overeat massively today, but I'm going to do like 3 protein sparing modified fasts, for the next 3 days. And I had to learn that I will never freaking do a protein sparing modified fast, because I just like eating too much, and I just don't want to eat that little amount of food. So now I just made a rule for myself, like, I am not going to do a protein sparing modified fast, so I can overeat, but then I have to deal with the consequences, because I'm not going to do the fast. So yeah, exactly. Like, as long as your brain has a way to justify what you're doing, then it will be harder to avoid doing it. Yeah.
But also it works in the other direction. Also, what I do or suggest other people doing, if they, it's so hard to diet if you start at the point where you feel like really bad about yourself. It, even if that's an interesting thing, because everyone after overeating feels bad about him or herself. Even if you take just bodybuilders or fitness models who came off the stage, then they had, I don't know, 2 days of overeating, they're still super lean, but they will tell you, I feel so terrible, I gained weight, I look terrible, everything is just terrible. And as I already mentioned before, I think it's really a bad starting point to start with when you try to do something better or like have a healthier diet. because then you have this negative mindset, you feel bad about yourself, and you kind of have to, force yourself, maybe, okay, I have to go to the gym, but I feel like so unsporty, I feel so, I don't know, weak, I feel so, whatever you tell yourself how you feel. But if you kind of start with setting yourself into the positive mindset, like, okay, now the person I'm now, not even like projecting to the future self, the person I want to become, that is, I don't know, lean, muscular, whatever, but also speaking of yourself, that it kind of already is the reality now. Okay, the person I'm now really enjoys going to the gym, really enjoys exercising. And, if you pass the, I don't know, junk food aisle in the supermarket and you're tempted to get some junk food, it's like, no, the person I am now doesn't eat such stuff.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Yeah, like an identity point almost at that point.
Yeah, so you have to adopt a new identity, but what many people also like think or say, you have to imagine your future self and how it will be. But if you're depressed and you start like emotional eating, then you don't care about your future self, but you care about how you feel now. So it is, in my opinion, more powerful just to tell yourself, okay, what I want to do now, it's not what I actually want, because I'm not this person anymore.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Great point. So, shall we give some practical tips? Like, so for example, on food cravings, that's one question that I get asked pretty frequently, like how to deal with specific food cravings. So that's obviously a big kind of topic of controversy. Some people say that the best way to deal with food cravings is to flexible dieting. If it fits your macros, just fit it into your macros. Other people say that it's easier to just cut them out altogether. I would say for me, usually it's easier to just cut it out altogether, because I wonder if there is any research on this. I haven't come across any, which is about like, what kind of personality types are better with moderation and less good with moderation. I think in general, I'm not very good at moderation. I still think, of course, it's a skill that everybody has to learn and master to some degree. But in general, I'm just not a good moderator person. But I think the first thing to ask yourself when it comes to food cravings is this a trigger food, or is this just some random tasty food that would be good to have, but I just shouldn't have too much of it because it's very calorie dense or whatever. So for me, the former, like peanut butter, to me that's a trigger food, and like to me it's just not worth it, period, to have it in my diet, because I can have it in moderation, but it will not be satisfying. I will not be full. Like it will just be this constant battle of like willpower and self-control and whatever. It's just easier to not have it. However, something like dark chocolate, I can have a couple of hundred calories of like a 90% dark chocolate, and I will have it with some decaf coffee or something, and it will be an amazing experience. And like I don't like that will have no negative impacts on my overall well-being. So I think that's the first thing to identify. If it's a trigger food, which by definition pretty much means that you just can't seem to consume it in moderation, or if you do, then it's very fatiguing, then I would say you're better off just cutting it out. Just don't have it around the house. Make a rule, you're not buying it. Like if you're in the store, avoid that that aisle where that food is. That's a rule. If it's something like just something tasty, you shouldn't go ham on it, but you can have it in moderation. From experience, it. Then flexible dieting, IFYM philosophy, just have it in moderation. So I would say that's the first rule. What are your first thoughts on?
Yeah, I totally agree with it. And you asked if there's some research. I'm not sure if there's like really research on this topic, but from different like type of research, I think we could even extrapolate, because regarding like reward center and brain, we know that different people have kind of different activity in the reward center and brain. So for some people, like eating or some activities that are associated with addiction give much more reward than for others. So if you are the person that, I don't know, I think I'm definitely the person that there's something screwed up with my reward center in my brain. So I don't know, I can't answer it. At least you, I don't know, put me into an MRI scan and then you do some experiments with me. But from all the things where I analyzed my behavior and observed my actions, I think that I'm definitely the person when, like, with probably kind of, I don't know, bigger activity in this reward center. And what I also noticed, it depends on my general mood. So in general, if it's summer, it's sunny and I'm happy, I have fewer difficulties to control myself. So I'm fine with it. Even if I have peanut butter at home, I can much better control it. But if it's winter, gray weather, I'm in a bad mood, and then I have also more difficulties to control it. So it also depends on the situation in my life, or my environment, how well I can actually control myself. And I think it's also something that has to be considered, because also for diets, or like, I don't know, removing foods from your diet, it isn't the same. Even if you take the same person, it's not like just individual variability, but even if you take the same person, it doesn't have to be the same all the time. It can, vary from week to week. What hasn't been a trigger food before maybe can become a trigger food when the person is stressed, when, I don't know, the person is maybe kind of affected by seasonal disorders, like because of the bad weather. Yeah. And I think that's also an interesting thing. That's why it's also important to review the diet and review maybe also the trigger foods. Because what I made for myself, and it works amazingly, and it's also what I do with my clients, is like such a ban list. So where you have to go through all the food you have at home and just to rate it according to the probability. If I have a really bad day, if I'm an emotional eater, and if I, for whatever reason, fall off the wagon and, I don't know, just want to binge, how high is the probability that I will like really overeat on this food? And everything that has high probability has to go, or like even higher than average. Average would be something like, okay, I would have some of this food, but probably will lose my interest pretty soon. So for example, I know I like chickpeas, but I would probably maybe have a can of chickpeas, but I wouldn't have 3 cans of chickpeas.
Yeah.
Then it's like, it's a food I enjoy, but I wouldn't overeat on it, or at least not like overeat massively. But it's a different thing, like with peanut butter, bread, chocolate, and so on.
Yeah.
And then all the foods where the probability is high of overeating, they have to go. It doesn't mean that you can't have it, or the trigger foods, I still have them. I have them even pretty often. But the important thing is I get them when I really want them, and in really small packages. So there's like peanut butter in 30-gram packages. It's like really small, and it's like relatively cheap for the small, relatively expensive for the small amount. So if I really want, I would get it, but then I would I think my rational mind would say just, no, it's just too expensive to buy like this really small packages with peanut butter.
Yeah.
And the same with chocolate, like 30 grams chocolate bars. And always, if I know that, even if I buy a new food and I know there's kind of a high probability that I might overeat on it, I go for the smallest package possible, smallest package I can get. And in general, what I realized, if it's a food that is kind of already ready to eat, like for example, protein bars, I usually don't buy them, because it's so much easier if you act impulsively. And you act impulsively if it's mostly triggered by some emotions, like maybe positive, negative, or even when you, I don't know, get stuck, if you're bored, if you're depressed, whatever. Then, and it's easier to get and to eat, then I shouldn't have it at home. But if it's something like, for example, flour, if I want to have cookies, I have just to put everything together to, I don't know, cake or cookies, bake them, and then I can have it. Then the probability is much lower than I will make it at all, because everyone's lazy. If I had this impulsive decision, okay, I want to have cookies now, and then I think, okay, I have to bake them first, and then no, do you know what? Just screw it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, you're not going to like pour down flour, yeah, you'll probably have to cook something with it. But another thing here, I mean, obviously we have to point out that like the most obvious thing that is not obvious for a lot of people, but first of all, just don't buy what you don't intend on eating. Like, just simply knowing that something is there, like that increases the chance of, you eating it. So that's why, like when I'm at home with my family and I know that there's all the delicious food in the fridge, that's like there's a lot higher of a chance of me actually going there and eating it than me going to the store and buying it. So that's the first thing. But let's hope that most people know that. Another thing that kind of is a non-conventional way of thinking about it is when you go without foods for a long time, your kind of cravings for it will just go down simply because it's less salient in your mind, and your taste buds change over time. Like if you go on a bland, pretty restrictive diet for a while, after that it's like, yeah, I know that chocolate ice cream is really awesome, but like I don't even really remember how it tasted. And this is actually something that I always realize that if I go on like a pretty low calorie diet where I'm basically just eating like lean protein sources and veggies, which is like a more extreme form of dieting, then I always realize that I could care less about like these really tasty stuff. I just want more of these lean protein sources and veggies because I'm hungry. So like it's kind of not a very enjoyable way of managing cravings, but by going under a severe diet or even like doing longer fasting periods, you kind of put like a hard reset on your palate and kind of on your reward circuits or whatever. I don't know how that works, but I always find that it works really well. I don't know if you had experience with that.
I made the experience that if I didn't eat something for a while and then I got it and ate it, what was actually recently with peanut butter, I realized actually it doesn't taste as good as I have it in memory or I haven't imagined it. The same with chocolate, the same actually with almost everything. All the food I, let's say, cut out of my diet and then I have it like on rare occasions was like, actually I thought it was better. But when I start eating it on a more regular basis, it starts tasting better and better. I don't know if my body gets kind of used to it or like also the doses increase, which is like a really interesting thing, because I think if I start eating something that is maybe high in calories, then first I'm careful with it, but then I don't know, I kind of get used to it. So it gets like considered as normal food. And then I start eating more and more of it. So it's kind of as if I would lose respect from it. And then it's a good point or to cut it out from my diet.
Yeah, I mean, that's I'm so glad you mentioned this, because this is something that keeps on fascinating me, because like anytime I, eat something like some, pretty classic, milk chocolate, like a Milka strawberry chocolate or whatever, I always realize how crap this actually tastes. Like, because I imagine before I eat it, because I see the commercials and I expect this amazing flowing, melting, chocolatey thing in my mouth. And it's like a dry piece of crap. Like it really is not that good. I mean, I'm sure if you go to like France, Paris, and eat some amazingly prepared, dish, that will taste pretty amazing. But like, actually, a couple of months ago, I had a pretty bad blowout, and I actually went to McDonald's. Not proud of it, but it happened. And I mean, it was incredible. Like, I was eating that stuff. I had like some chicken nuggets, I think, some fries, and some ice cream. And I was eating this, and it's like, this is not real. Like, this is not food. Like, it literally felt like it was like pre-digested or something. Like, it did, like the texture and everything, it didn't feel like actual food. Like it was an interesting experience to go through that, because like, okay, like this is what people eat on a regular basis. Like our conception about like what food is must be pretty different at this point, because like for someone who has been eating healthy for a while, like that literally doesn't resemble food.
Yeah. Yeah.
tangent.
Yeah, but actually, I'm happy you brought it up, like two things, texture and also how perception and everything changes. Because now, before I leave UK, I was like, okay, I will just go and get some of the food I really love, so I can eat it. Just also like some of kind of dangerous food I cut out of my diet just to eat it again to see how it is before I leave. And it's like for like many dishes or like many of the foods, it was like really I like it, but actually it's not that good. And actually that was also something I realized with peanut butter, because in my opinion, also in Germany, they don't have a good peanut butter. So they have like either like really weird peanut butter which isn't roasted, so it doesn't really taste good, or they have this American style peanut butter where it's like sugar and fat and oil and whatever else added, but not like 100% natural peanut butter. So I was like, okay, I will get it. And then I turned it actually also in an experiment. I was like, okay, imagine I can eat as much as I want until I'm satisfied. And basically I ate half of the jar with a spoon until I was like satisfied to say, okay, I'm fine, I can, let it go. And what I also realized was that if I put it on something like bread, it doesn't taste that good. So for me, peanut butter tastes only in isolation in large quantities. And that's exactly the point you brought up. It's just not worth it, because I know if I can't enjoy peanut butter, like sandwich with peanut butter, normal people can enjoy. And for me, in order to enjoy it, I have to eat half a jar with a spoon, which probably most people, or like many people, they can't do it. They can't like eat such a high amount of peanut butter, which actually gave me also the clue that I don't know, maybe either with my taste buds, there's something different than for most people, or maybe also with my brain reward center. So I need like higher doses to trigger the reward other people get with lower doses. And then it's just, definitely not worth for me to have it. And the second point about texture is I actually optimize my diet by finding lots of substitutions for kind of the foods I love, but there are also trigger foods. So I found healthier substitutions. Like I love bread, so I've created lots of protein bread recipes, basically with exactly the macros that fit into my meal. And the texture is good. It was like really satisfying. I, could pre-make lots of them and keep it in my fridge and take it out. So I was like really happy. Now, before when I knew that I'm going to leave, I didn't order any protein powders, because I usually get them in big batches from protein powder suppliers, because I was like, okay, I'm leaving anyway. It's not worth it. I will just eat whatever like the last month. And that's when all the weird cravings started. And I was like craving, I don't know, bread. I was like, I usually never crave bread. Yeah, because I had this like protein bread all the time in my diet. But okay, then I went once to a shop and there was this one certain type of bread I was like really craving. And I was like, okay, and it was like a really big package, which I, didn't want to buy, because as I already told, if there's a food that might become dangerous, I kind of my rule is to get the smallest package possible. But I was like, okay, I don't want to have any other bread. I just want to have this one. And I was like, okay, for me, it became at this point also like a experiment. As a curious scientist, it was like, okay, I will just, get it and see what happens. Because I'm happy that I have the ability to kind of disconnect my analytical mind from my emotional, brain, or part of the brain, or my emotional self. So I can, for example, overeat on something and analyze at the same time what I feel, what probably the reason for it is, then look up the research literature and find out the reason so I can prevent it in the future. And so I got this bread, and the first few pieces were really satisfying, but then like satisfaction decreased. So I was like, okay, it doesn't taste as satisfying as the first few pieces. And I realized that with many different foods like chocolate, the first two pieces taste much better than, if I continue eating and start eating more. But I still had this feeling, okay, I still want to have something. I still kind of want to go into more. And it was like, okay, but it's like not that satisfying. And then when I realized was that what I was craving was not like the entire part, or like not the entire piece of bread, but actually like really fluffy parts on the side. So it was kind of, not really, it was like this really fluffy type of bread. So with crust on top and bottom, and like on the side, there were like really like, I don't know, kind of moist, fluffy parts of the bread. And then I realized actually what I'm after is this like moist and fluffy part.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, okay, pretty often it's probably not really the food I crave, but the texture. And the same is, for example, with chocolate. If I want to have chocolate, either it has to be like really thin, so I kind of can break it with my tongue in my mouth, or like really thick and creamy, but kind of not in the middle. Then it was like, oh, that's really interesting. So it's not just your craving, I know, in general calories when you are in a large calorie deficit, or maybe nutrients when you are on a low carb diet, or like deficient in something, or for whatever reason, or just want sugar to that you feel happy. But there is also a certain craving for some textures, and I think for me it's also like ice cream. So sometimes I analyze the same thing with ice cream. So I got some ice creams I used to like to eat, and now I realize actually they don't taste like taste-wise that nice. It is actually just a texture I'm after.
Yeah.
And if you know it, if you can kind of understand what do you actually crave, like the taste, the nutrients in this food, or the texture. If it's just about the texture, you can actually pretty easily, find a kind of friendlier solution. Like, for me, protein bread, protein pancakes, protein crepes. All the recipes I developed.
For peanut butter?
What about peanut? I ask myself this question as well. I don't know. I think for peanut butter, for me, it's like also this crunchiness, because I like crunchy peanut butter.
Mm-hmm.
I try to imitate actually peanut butter. I try to come up with recipes that kind of imitate the crunchy peanut butter, but I wasn't successful so far. I tried to kind of ground dried chickpeas to make this kind of crunchy parts of peanut butter, but then you have still to add lots of oil or fat to it to make it like more creamy.
Yeah, actually, because I'm just thinking that like for oatmeal, which I am the only weirdo for whom like oatmeal is a trigger food, but probably because in my low carb days I used to make this cauliflower like creamy rice looking thing. Like it was like cooked cauliflower mashed up, and it's like protein powder. It was really good. So that I could maybe revisit that. And I mean, maybe you could use that for peanut butter as well, but then you would need a lot of like thickener, like guar gum or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Actually, my friend, she is she can't eat any starches because she has like she doesn't tolerate them, so she feels terrible when she eats starches. So she has actually lots of substitutes for oatmeal she makes. Actually, I can ask her and what she uses. I think she uses also protein powders, and maybe also vital wheat gluten or anything. So yeah, I can ask her. But if it's like if you know what it is, what kind of you enjoy about this food, often it is like really possible to find substitutes that are kind of similar but aren't such big triggers. For example, I know if I love sweet food, so I can actually eat sweets all the time, just one normal meal a day, and everything else can be just sweet. But if I replace sugar by artificial sweeteners, I enjoy the taste. I can think, oh, I would like to get some more, but it's much easier for me to resist than if I would use sugar. Yeah. And the interesting thing is now, after I know all the years I used artificial sweeteners, if I crave sweetness, I crave most of the time like artificial sweetness. I don't like really crave the sugary sweetness.
Yeah. There's also like during some deeper phases of my past diets, I was using so much stevia, for example, with tea and everything, that like a Diet Coke actually tasted like pretty bland at that point, because I was sweetening my own beverages so intensely. So it's again like your palate changes pretty radically. Yeah. Shall we, like, because we've been going for like an hour and a half, probably are going to lose most people. Maybe go all over some practical just tips to just in general make dieting easier, things that helped us, because we have a couple of tips here.
Yeah. So, okay. Do you want to start?
Yeah. So my first, like we talked about this before the call, that to me there are like three big rules, or like three, maybe two. Let's see. So a couple of like golden rules of dieting for me if I wanted to be successful. Number one is food volume. So, and by that I just mean the amount of actual bulk that you're like ingesting during the day. So as we know, like calories in, calories out, that has to be in place. So you're going to be in a calorie deficit. So you are going to eat less calories. So you have to compensate it in some way. And the easiest way to do it is to just simply eat enough volume of food. So that's why, veggies and fruits, especially berries, are a golden choice. So that has to be in place. And we talked about this before, that I actually track the amount of weight that I eat in my food. So I shoot for, these days I easily eat like 5 kilograms of food during a given day.
5 kilograms.
5 kilograms. So yeah, like 10 pounds. So that's a lot. I have, but like I have a big appetite, and that's for me like anywhere between like 2,000 to 2,500 calories a day. That's what I'm cutting on at the moment. And I have a big appetite. I also exercise just like yourself. I'm in the gym like at about 7 hours a week at least of weightlifting. So, it takes some food to actually satisfy my hunger. And that's what I do. But, for people who are less crazy than me, probably you don't need as much. So that's one rule. The other thing is,
I think for me it's about 1.5 to 2 kilograms a day of food I eat. Also depends on the day, but usually like for serving sizes for veggies, I have like 300 grams per meal plus like everything else I eat.
Yeah. I have like from raw veggies, I have like some, like for example, today I will have probably like 2 cucumbers at least. That's already like 600 grams. Then like, mushrooms I will have today, that's like 500 grams. That's already. And then, I have some berries, which, I have it in these 400 gram-ish, so about a pound, a bag each. I will probably have like 2 or 3 bags of those. So it adds up quickly.
Yeah.
When fruits and veggies, those, a lot of fiber, a lot of water, but they are very filling. So that would be my number one tip. But the other thing is to just partition your calories to those times of the day when you naturally have a higher hunger or just desire to eat. So for me, I could always kind of eat. Even if I'm not hungry, I wake up in the morning, I'm generally not very hungry, but I could still eat. And I usually eat something small. But at night, if this empty stomach feeling hits me before I want to sleep, that's a killer. Like to me, that's such a compliance sabotager for me, that like the most important thing for me is to go to bed on a full stomach, because I sleep better and it drains a lot less my overall self-control. So, but we talked about like for you, eating some food while you're working, that energizes you. So for you, it's important to have food around those times. So that would be my rule. So
for me, it's actually the opposite. If I eat too much before I go to bed, I can't sleep well. I will wake up during the night.
There you go.
And then it will be harder for me to fall asleep. And like I try to put most of my calories or like most of my food to the evening, just because I exercise in the afternoon. Just makes sense from nutrient timing to have like most of my food in the evening. But it's often for me so hard, like while I'm working, not to not to snack, because I know that when I get stuck, or I know if I work on a really hard task, I want to go to eat just kind of to relax. So now for a while I again shifted most of my calories to the morning just to work more efficiently. That's where I had to set priorities. What is more important for me at the moment? Is it my like progress in the gym and like I don't know, body composition fitness wise, or is it my progress work wise? So when I was noticing that that I don't focus too much on my work, then I was like, okay, let's shift it back to the morning, most of my calories. Now I actually I've made kind of a certain new structure because I experiment around with my schedule a lot. And I try to, like, instead of the snacks I have when I know I get bored with work or get stuck with work, I start introducing walks. So when I get stuck with work and feel like I can't go on, I just go or try to go for a walk instead of going and having a snack. And then if I can shift most of my calories back to the evening or to the post-workout time, then it's also not necessarily like in terms of food volume, because I know that I don't feel well if I'm too full in the evening. That's when I eat more like higher calorie foods, higher fat foods, because they're higher in calories and not so high in volume.
Yeah.
So this way I manage it still to have like most of my calories after my workout without feeling so full and uncomfortable that I can't sleep properly.
Yeah, and that's a prime example of, like, we are pretty much, I mean, I tried, anyway, like, we are like opposite in that regard, like, and that's where, someone will go on a YouTube channel where some guy is like glorifying intermittent fasting, and then the person will feel bad if they eat in the morning. And I'm not even making fun of these people, because I do notice, even now, knowing what I know now, is that I'm prone to that stuff. Like, I just listened to a podcast interview with Menno Hanselmans, for those who don't know. And he talked about the fact that when he eats, he gets sleepy and he is not working as efficiently. And even then, I was like, oh shit, like, maybe then I shouldn't eat before I'm working because I will get sleepy too. Like, that was the inner dialogue in my head, which is stupid, because I know that eating something in the morning makes me feel a lot better than fasting completely in the morning. So that's why, people who are promoting a certain meal schedule and this is how everybody should do it, it's usually from people for whom it worked amazingly. Martin Burkhan and Greg O'Gallagher, those are the people that, people associate, intermittent fasting the most with. Those guys probably wake up in the morning feeling really full, and their appetite goes up throughout the day, and they sleep well if they have a full stomach. And so they start promoting it, and then everybody jumps on the bandwagon. So just, don't get brainwashed. Like, actually observe your own body and when your natural inclinations are to eat more food, and put more food there. So yeah. I guess that's the whole message here.
yeah, totally. So, the thing is just most of the time the people who promote something, they are so enthusiastic about it, just probably because it works for them, that it's so easy to get inspired. It's like, whoa, that's so amazing, and I need to try it as well. And actually, for me, when you mentioned like what Menno said, that he feels sleepy after a meal, I feel sleepy after a meal as well. That's why it's actually important for me, if I want to work efficiently, not to feel too full. Which is like, okay, I shouldn't have also like a big meal full of veggies. So I should kind of also limit my veggie intake if I want to work afterwards, because afterwards I would just, feel too sleepy if I'm too full. And also my desire to train. If I'm too full, I just don't want to go to the gym and train. If I imagine to put on my powerlifting belt, if I'm too full, it's like, for me, it's like, okay, I just don't want to go and train at all.
Yeah, exactly. And it's easy to fall for it. Like, even now, I watch a video of Greg O'Gallagher, even with the critical thinking and everything, I just see him like standing there with this incredibly muscular body, and he's saying like, oh, in the morning I just had black coffee, it's so amazing. And it's like, damn, that seems like such a lifestyle to try. And it's like, I should do it, but I know that it doesn't work for me that well. But still, it's crazy.
Yeah, definitely.
The next thing that I think we could touch on is which one should be it? Like one thing that helped me a lot. I don't know if you had any experiences with this, But like being in a mess and like being very like, for me, like having a messy kitchen, for example, that for me is especially like after a meal. Like if I make a huge mess, I did a video on this not that long ago, that like having like I sit down to eat, make a huge mess, it almost like urges me to eat more, because it's like, oh shit, like when I'm done with eating, like I just have to do all this cleanup.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know exactly what you mean, because that's another point. Yeah, I definitely observed it. That this kind of procrastination and willpower point, in my opinion,
Yeah.
especially in the evening when you're tired anyway. And often if I think, oh, I need to do, I don't know, in the evening I need whatever, clean up the kitchen, then write the emails, write whatever, I would just rather continue there eating my dinner for the next hour. Even if I
Yeah.
don't want to eat, just the thought, okay, I have to get up now and do all the work, it will make me eating more. And
Yeah.
actually, I find it really funny that you brought up this example with messy kitchen, because for me, it's my room. So basically, on kind of, if you walk in and depending on how tidy it is, you can actually say how well, I don't know, my life, my current life or my mental well-being is. Because
Yeah.
if I feel good, then everything is super tidy. Everything is on the places. It's like really like kind of already too much. So it's like, don't touch anything, don't move anything. It has to be there. But then if I know I'm stressed or I don't feel well, it becomes like a huge mess. And that's my room, and how tidy it is. It's actually the best indicator of what's going on in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that's something that I'm kind of learning to appreciate more and more, because I'm one of the most, in terms of like room cleanness and that kind of stuff, I'm one of the most disorganized person that I know. So this is something that I kind of have to appreciate more and more as I get older and I live alone mostly. That, like waking up, like today, for example, I spent the morning cleaning up, because like I was literally like, I don't want to go into this kitchen because it's disgusting. Like it's so messy. I just don't want to see it. Like that's unbelievable. So I cleaned up and I look at it. In general, I don't, I can exist in a pretty messy environment, but this was even too much for me. And now I look at it and it's so much better and so much more conducive to being the kind of person who is on point with nutrition, because that's an organized person. So kind of you're signaling to yourself with your environment kind of the type of person that you are in a way.
Yeah, yeah,
So
definitely. Once I heard like a really great quote that if you have to be creative, and when you create, you have to, you often create a mess, then you can't have a messy environment, because, a mess on top of a mess, it just doesn't work. And I think the more I kind of grew up, the more tidy I became, because I just realized a chaos as kind of kills often productivity.
yeah, the environment is powerful. Like that's why now I have the freedom to work from home or go to the office where everybody else works. And generally, I just prefer going to the office. A, because it's free cardio, like walking there, but B, because yeah, it's just more conducive to being productive. And next,
Actually, that's actually a good point about dieting. It's like a mess. If you don't have a structure, I notice it's difficult for me to keep up with my diet, or I'm more likely to fall off the wagon if I don't have a fixed structure. If my, I don't know, day is messy, or if something happens I didn't expect, and then the likelihood, if I don't have this like rigid structure with my meals and my schedule, when I have to work, when I have to go to the gym, then something starts like also kind of this decision fatigue. Oh, okay, this and this happened, I have to do it first, but then should I go to the gym, or should I don't know, do something, or like continue working? But then when should I have my pre-workout meal, and when should I have my post-workout meal? But actually I'm hungry now, so what am I going to do?
exactly, exactly. It's tiny little things. I mean, I'm sure everybody I mean, I don't know about you. You travel around a lot. I do too. And it's not so much at this point because I make a really strong point in, for example, finding a gym on preferably the first day when I arrive somewhere. And usually I do my research in advance and see the closest gym to my location. But I think most people experience that when they go to a new country, for example, then a lot of the ingrained habits just go out of the window right away, because the association with action and location is just not there anymore as it used to. So that's
but
yeah.
Also on the other hand, it's a good kind of time to make changes if you want to make them. It's like, okay, I want to improve something about my schedule, about my diet. Then you can actually see it often as more or less a new beginning.
Definitely, yeah. I'm always so excited when I go to a new place. It's like a new life, like everything is new.
Yeah.
So next thing that I have, I actually haven't written it down here, but just like, and we talked about this before, this challenging for both of us to focus, if you can, even if you have like one meal during the day when you're actually focusing on your food and not being distracted by other things. I mean, there is tons of, well, not tons, but like there is definitely research on this, that like being distracted, watching something, reading things, or even listening to things, you will eat longer and you will have the desire to eat more. And so, and it's hard. Like for me, as much as I know that this is true, it's hard for me to not do it, because as we talked about it, like during the day, I'm not going to watch YouTube videos, because like I'm not going to sit there for like 10 minutes watching a YouTube video on my phone. So like eating is kind of a convenient time to do it. But at the same time, I realize that like if I focus on my meals, like literally a 200 calorie meal can feel as satisfying as a 600 calorie meal where I didn't focus on my food. So it's a big difference. It's just kind of tempting to not do it, but yeah.
Definitely. So I know it for myself. So first of all, if I don't enjoy a meal, I just continue eating. And there's actually research on this topic as well. So there were like people in different groups, and they were giving them lunches, and one group had to focus on eating lunch. The other group had to, I don't know, read something at the same time, and the third group had to think of something else. And then the researchers counted how many cookies the people ate during the afternoon. So they have given them like free access to cookies. And the people who didn't focus on their lunch ate more cookies than other groups. And they suggested that there's also something about our brains. So if we don't really realize that we are eating, then it's like much more likely that we, overeat later today. And for me, I always used to work, or like used to eat while working or while being on Facebook. Then after a while, I banned work. Then the next step was ban social media during my like eating time. Then I had YouTube most of the time running. Now the step is I don't have anything running where someone is talking. So I listen most of the time to music while I'm eating, just because I find it more relaxing and I don't want, to have silence all the time. So I listen most of the time to music, but I like really forbid myself to, do anything else, or even to think, like, because it's so easy when I eat, then I start thinking, oh, what should I do next? Should I write up this, or what should I do for this project? And that's also a distraction.
Yeah, I actually allow myself to daydream while I'm eating. Like I don't see, in my experience, that doesn't keep me eating for longer. Maybe it does for other people, I'm not sure. But I always find that like, to me, eating is like, that's like a creative brainstorming. Like I'm eating my food and it's like video ideas or podcast guest ideas, all those things like come to me so beautifully. It's like, that's cool. I'll take it as an extra benefit.
Yeah, for me, I have the same, exactly. And that's why in the past, when I worked and got stuck with work, my first thing was going to eat, just because also like, especially certain kind of type of eating, if I have a mixture of different nuts and seeds and raisins, dried fruits, then I'm more likely to pick out first one type of nut, then the second one, and eat them. And it's kind of relaxing for my brain. That's when I got most of my ideas. But that's another decision I had to make. It's like, okay, maybe I get more ideas, I get more productive with work when I kind of do relaxation eating at the same time, but it's definitely not the best for my body composition. So that's why now I really try to get out and get for a short walk between my working slots, because I know when I walk I can relax as well, and that's when I get new ideas as well. And then it's also beneficial for then I get more movement in, then that means I can eat more than if I just sit down all the time.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's why a lot of these successful business people, typically they are not in the best shape. Like maybe because of that, because they they kind of make a pact with the devil. Like anytime they are stuck, they snack on some candy and whatever, and they're changing the world. They are inventing whatever electric cars and stuff, but the six-pack is gone. So but
it's definitely, that's what I say all the time. If you would like to destroy all the research and kill all the scientists, you wouldn't even need to, I don't know, bomb them. Just put poisonous cookies in each lab. It's like such an incredible amount how much like crap and junk scientists eat. So I'm not an exception to it. So that was also this habit I got into and was doing for years until I got out of the lab and was like, okay, no, there's something I really need to change. It's really not good for me. But just put cake, cookies in the kitchen in each lab. Nobody would even ask where does it come from. There's something to eat. Let's go and get it.
Yeah, and I think this brings me to my next tip, which is just make sure to, I mean, generally I always say stay busy, when you're dieting, especially be distracted as much as possible, which by itself is kind of a vague tip because, being distracted, I mean, we are always distracted with something. So the more engaging, like the more of you that activity engages, the better. And so that's why, like still for you, for example, and for me, I mean, you're working a lot in front of your laptop. And I think like the worst type of work that you can do when you're dieting is pretty much what we are doing, because we work from home and like we work in front of a laptop. So, but for example, my friend Ivan, he is a personal trainer. He, he's running around all day in the gym, helping clients, trying to solve different problems. He's probably not thinking about food during the day. So I think what you're doing with your walks, it can be a very smart strategy for people. Just make sure to incorporate like frequent environment change during the day. When you're like at one point you're in this environment, now you arrive to this environment. Because then it kind of keeps your brain stimulated and it's a lot more engaged with kind of the present moment. You're less likely to think about food too much.
Yeah, I can't work too long at the same time. If I have like 1.5 hour time slot, if I work first from my room, then I have to move to living room, then to go to a cafe or somewhere else. I can't focus too long at the same place. And actually regarding like keeping everything like interesting and not boring, it's so important. And actually there was I think some cool research. I didn't read the original research papers. I watched just some talks on this topic, and basically what they found out was that people who play something which is like really engaging, then the people have less food cravings later. And it's just because it seems like there's the same part or some area of our brain that is occupied by some games like Tetris or sorting diamonds or whatever. And that is the same area that is responsible for, imagining food and food cravings, which is like, a real cool thing. And I have now, several game apps on my phone. And sometimes when I got stuck and it's like, okay, I want to go and snack, I was like, no, just it's kind of also easier. Take your phone and, play Tetris. I know that I won't play for too long. It will be, less time lost than if I would go on social media and start checking, out my Instagram profile, what everyone is doing. And it often, does the trick. So I'm like, I don't get up and get some food.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody kind of knows intuitively that like you wouldn't think about food when you're skydiving. Like if someone was to like throw you out of an airplane from like, I don't know, a kilometer high, then you probably wouldn't think about food while you're landing. So that's yeah. God, I think I don't know, is there anything else
Yeah, I think we got through it.
yeah, I think so. I think we will have to break this up to like 1,000 parts to I mean, I'm sure there are some crazy people who will download it and listen to the whole thing. Um, but we will probably, it will be
Yeah.
wise to put up like some small sections of this.
Yeah, but it's also like all the time when I do Facebook live streams, I'm like, it's like, oh, actually, I don't know what to talk about. I just want to do a live stream. And then I start talking and talking and talking. Sometimes it turns like 1 hour. And it was like, at the beginning, it's just, I didn't even know what should I talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. So yeah, maybe we could mention to the people that we put together a little thingy for
Yeah.
them that they can use. So basically everything that we talked about and the tips are kind of summarized and it's engaging. So there are some questions that you can answer for yourself. And based on that, you can come up with some smart strategies for yourself to make dieting easier for yourself. And you can download it, and the link will be in the description, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the link is in the description below. And this is kind of a cheat sheet, and it's separated into 2 parts. One part is about trigger foods, where you have to identify what are your trigger foods, and then you would need to avoid these foods. And the second part is about your behavior and the situations that make you overeat. And then when you need to, analyze your behavior. For example, oh, okay, I got this bar of chocolate. What did I feel? I felt stressed. So, okay, I noticed that I feel stressed. That's why I want to get a bar of chocolate. And the more you do it, the more you notice it, and then it's easier also to come up with solutions what to do against it. So, okay, the bar of chocolate won't probably solve my problem if I'm stressed at work and have lots of work to go through. So then you can start developing other strategies. And first of all, understanding that this food or food as a reward won't actually solve your problems. And I think that's a very important step. And then you can develop strategies. Okay, if I need to have a rest, I would go for a walk, or maybe even call someone, because it's also rewarding to have social interactions, because loneliness kills. So if you notice, okay, I got stuck with work or with whatever, and I'm stressed, and I'm like more likely to get some food and what I actually don't need, then you could maybe call your friend or answer someone's message. Or even it's also kind of rewarding and creates or like gives you kind of positive feelings if you compliment people. So you could, I don't know, if you want a break, go on Instagram, and if you like a picture, just comment on this picture and make the person a compliment. Say, okay, it looks really good, or I don't know, well done, or whatever. And it is also a strategy how you can increase your happiness hormones and kind of feel this reward even without food.
Exactly. That's very well said. And it will be you who is developing the strategy, so it will not be someone else's enforced, way of doing things. It will be your thing, and this will be what you decide to do. So it will be more empowering, and it will be a lot more likely that you will actually stick to it. So
yeah, definitely.
So yeah, print it out and print it out and actually fill it out. Think about it and use it.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. Yeah, you have to. It's everything is a skill. It's like, even if you can't do it now, if you feel like, okay, you're overwhelmed by everything and you feel like you're out of control, you have to practice it to get into control. It won't work, straight away. Not like you tried it once and then everything is perfect. Your life is perfect. It requires time. It's like every skill. When you were a child and you had to learn how to read and how to write, you didn't learn it in one day. But then you made kind of progress pretty rapidly, because then you learned all the letters, and after, I don't know, 1 year, you could read. And that's the same thing. It can appear now that 1 year is like really long to, get your life back on track, get rid of all the impulsive behaviors, bad habits, and, just do everything right. But, if you think about it, about your past, and most likely how many years you have done it wrong, and like how many times you messed something up and how unhappy it made you, then like 1 year is nothing in comparison to it. If I think, probably my last 10 years, how many things I got wrong and how many things I got, I messed up, and I always wanted to have like really fast results. If someone would have told me like 5 years ago, it's like, if you follow the strategy, you will be like really successful in 1 year, I would have thought, screw it, I want to be successful now, and just try to do something and not really work on like the real reasons. And then at the end, it would be just, a vicious cycle.
Yeah, that's very, very well said. I have nothing to add.
Okay, cool. Then thanks a lot for watching. And if you, I don't have any questions, you can also leave comments. We'll be happy to answer them. And have a wonderful evening, day, morning, wherever you are in the world.
Yeah.